Welcome, Richard here with AHF Products. Today we're going to talk about freight. Everybody's talking about freight. We're seeing price increases, and we're seeing, along with the increases in price, we're seeing it take 2 to 3 times as long. So we're going to talk about why. We'll call this What the Freight, because it's crazy and it's stuff that we've never seen in this industry in terms of pricing and also in terms of how long it's taking to get to materials. So why? So there's 3 reasons why we're experiencing this. The first one is that when we went into lockdown with COVID, folks simply weren't buying stuff. They weren't buying appliances, dishwashers, stoves. They weren't buying stuff for their houses, treadmills, and flooring. Flooring, the thing that we're most concerned about, right? Because that's our industry. They weren't simply buying things that furnish the home. And so that said, once things started to move back to a normal or in the direction of normal, and they've increasingly cranked up, the demand and the confidence level of the consumers, it also ramped up. And so when that happened, there was a surge in the need for shipping containers, a surge and an uptick which we have never seen in a condensed window of time. And so there simply were not and is not enough shipping containers to reach that demand. Too many are being purchased, and there aren't enough containers to put them on the containers and to move them through a window of time as quickly as possible. That's number 1. Number 2 is port congestion. Once the container is acquired and the flooring is put on it and it actually ships, now we're seeing a bottleneck at the ports. We're seeing congestion at ports we've never seen before. Imagine on a typical day, there's 50 ships sitting outside of the port of Boston. Now they're seeing 100 ships a day. This increases the process time to not only get that anchored ship into the port, but the time for customs, and the time to process, then to get on an LTL carrier, and then to ship that to its next destination. So the second one is the port congestion and the bottleneck at the ports. The third one is sort of 2-part, and it involves the processing and the transporting of freight on an LTL or a truck carrier. The first part of it that we are experiencing is a lack of LTL drivers. When COVID started, there was not a demand. There was not this big need for things to ship on trucks. Why? Because it was uncertain times and people simply weren't buying then. They were holding out. And so freight carriers, LTL carriers, they reduced staffing. And when they reduced that staffing, those drivers still had to put food on the table. They still had families to feed. They went out and found other jobs. And many of those drivers have not come back to those carriers. And so our LTL carriers are stretched thin. They simply don't have enough drivers to work with this demand, and also a demand they've never seen before, to move material on their trucks. The second part of that's related to freight carriers is that in many cases, once the material travels on the carrier, the freight carrier, the LTL, and it makes it to its destination city before it goes out locally to be delivered to that retailer or to that homeowner, they simply don't have enough workers to unload the amount and the level of trucks that they're seeing every day. So if they process normally 10 trucks a day at that particular location and unloaded them so that they could be transported locally, now they're seeing 20, and they simply don't have the manpower to do it. So again, these are the 3 reasons that we're seeing these increased freight timelines, and also reflective of freight increases in pricing, which the consumer then sees on the product. They are lack of containers, port congestion, and a stress on freight carriers due to manpower, whether it is not enough drivers, not enough LTL qualified drivers, or not enough manpower to unload the trucks at the rate that they're receiving them. And that's why everybody's saying, what the freight? it's taking forever. What the freight? Prices have gone up. Everything's increased, and it's taken even longer than it's ever before. And this is what we're all facing our industry. And I hope that this helped you better understand what's happening, so you can transfer that information, you can share that information with coworkers, and also the most important person to our business and your business, the end user, the consumer. Thanks a lot. Richard, AHF Products.